And welcome. Thank you for joining me. My name is Brent. I'm with Top of the Lake Coffee. Either you're watching live or viewing this on YouTube at a later time. Thank you for your interest in the coffee production and a small coffee farmer, how it impacts people that raise coffee, not only in the country of Guatemala, but around the world. I mean, coffee production is a very, very complex and year-long process. It's very labor intensive, and there are countless small farms in Guatemala and other places that where a family chooses to invest money in preparing the land and planting plants. Within 3 or 4 years, they get coffee. It's just not as simple as growing tomatoes as like here in the United States. It's very often challenging. And I'd like to just tell you a story today of a coffee farmer that I met. I'm going to withhold his name, but in the highlands region of Guatemala, he raises organic coffee. And there are many very big challenges associated with raising organic coffee. The organic certification process requires that a trench be dug around the entire outline of the coffee production site, like the field where coffee's grown, so that any kind of chemicals that might be used in neighboring farms won't leach into the organic coffee plot. And therefore, that there's a constant monitoring of that. Some farmers even plant a kind of a water absorbing plant around the perimeter of the field as well, just to protect the coffee from gaining any kind of chemical investment in it. So that digging of a trench and maintaining that is big. Then the fertilizer used is composted coffee cherry flesh and other organic materials so that the plants might thrive. So there's kind of additional steps, and after the coffee is produced, then it must be certified organic by a local agency that follows a strict set of rules to make sure that the coffee is indeed organic, does not have any chemicals in the product. So like that piece alone is a pretty significant investment. Beyond that, a typical farmer who raises coffee will tend the plants all year long. There's pruning, there's replacing plants, keeping the crop, keeping the plants healthy. There's a horrible virus called rust that undermines the health of coffee plants as well. So there's this kind of constant battle of just maintaining the healthy plant so that coffee might thrive. When the blooms of the coffee are pollinated, a green, they're called cherries. They look about the same size of a small cherry, grow on the plant. There's thousands on each plant. And they mature to red in color. And during harvest, which starts maybe mid to late November, in Guatemala, and goes often into February, maybe even to March, depending on the crop and its ripening, that harvest process is really a massive undertaking. And often, like, the entire family is involved, not necessarily as the children may go and play and enjoy their families. Some children may help out a bit, but really the hand picking of the coffee cherry and putting it into a sack on one side is like really arduous. Carrying this heavy bag up a very steep hill where often coffee is grown takes a lot of time and energy, and typically a lot of people in the community become involved in that. And there's migrant workers that come that are paid for their work, and just millions of coffee cherries are harvested. And for the farmer that grows organic coffee, of course, those organic cherries must be kept separate. And often a farmer will sell those coffee cherries to a local coffee broker or a cooperative. And that's where things become challenging, because the rise and fall of the commodity price for coffee severely impacts what a farmer might get for their crop. And if their only option is to sell, say, to a local cooperative or to a local broker, they're kind of at the mercy of the pricing set by that cooperative. And sometimes the price paid for a coffee in cherry, which still has some production to be done to it, is as low as, say, 15 cents a pound. which when a farmer labors all year and does all the harvesting required, that just feels to them like like almost wasted labor. I mean, the world commodity price for coffee has dropped about 65% in the last 4 years. It was around $1.65 a pound, excuse me, a pound about 4 years ago, and it's dropped below 89 cents, maybe even 75 cents a pound currently, which has had a dramatic impact, of course, on the people that raise the coffee. And that price that farmers are given is reflective of what broker or a cooperative might be able to sell their coffee. So again, when it drops, the bottom drops out of that market, the farmer really struggles to buy food for his family for a year, particularly if that's the primary source of income that's to last a year for a family. So it's a challenging dynamic, and farmers are always working really hard to improve their crop and to find better prices. And sometimes they're successful at that, but the farmers I've met are, sometimes struggle with not having outlet for their coffee other than one particular local opportunity. And so there's a feeling of being entrapped perhaps sometimes by the coffee marketplace, and the farmers just really wrestle with a sense of being powerless in that. So that's kind of the big issues that face small coffee farmers. Some of them do very well. They have a good local cooperative that buys their coffee and treats them with respect with regard to the pricing. And others, just have difficulty finding a broker and often end up selling to someone who doesn't pay them a good price and who is making a lot of money from their coffee. That middle person makes a lot of money instead of the farmer themselves. So it's a lot of difficult things to navigate as a coffee farmer. And I just would like to help you to understand how personal coffee is and how important it is for you to consider the sources of the coffee that you buy. Not everyone purchases coffee in an ethical way, although that's improving dramatically. And there are many, many, many coffee companies in the United States that are paying a great deal of attention to this issue. And I'm grateful for that. It makes a difference in the communities and helps them to thrive when there's solid economic base. But again, the shifting of the coffee market currently has made it more difficult for communities to thrive, and other crops are being sought. Some farmers are planting beans amongst their coffee plants because that adds nitrogen back to the soil, and it's another crop that can be grown as and sold. So people are really changing the way they do things. But again, the bottom line is the price of coffee, together with sometimes unethical purchases by middle people or cooperatives, has created a real stressful environment for small coffee farmers. And the reason why I think this is an important issue is having been to Guatemala several times and have met many, many coffee farmers, I have come to understand just how arduous and painstaking it is to produce coffee. And I've mentioned already that the plants require a lot of attention, and if you're doing organic, there's even another layer of attention that needs to be made. But in general, taking a coffee cherry, from that cherry to a cup of coffee requires a lot of steps. So I've mentioned harvest, where people are climbing up very steep hillsides, typically carrying a heavy bag of cherries to be taken to the market. That's a first step. However, after cherries are collected and they are sold or brought into a processing place, those cherries are soaked in water overnight, at least for 24 hours, to loosen the flesh a bit. And there's a sort of a milling machine that turns the cherries and has some teeth that removes the cherry flesh from each of the coffee beans inside. And typically there are 2 green coffee beans inside of that. And then after the cherries are removed, the actual coffee bean is taken through a channel of water that washes off the fruity part of that coffee cherry, so that the coffee has a consistent flavor. So they run that through channels of water to completely rinse off any residue. And then the coffee in its wet state is spread out upon either a concrete pad or on black plastic, any place where the sun can, be unshaded upon the coffee that green coffee that's in process. And over the course of about a week, they'll need to turn that coffee over consistently so that the coffee is completely dried before they go to the next step. So that is often an arduous piece. On top of that, individuals will be sorting those coffee beans for size and perfection, and they kind of move them to different piles depending on how the coffee is rated with size and form. And that in itself requires several people and several hands to do that. Once the coffee is dry, there's still a two-piece parchment. It's sort of like, it's not as hard as a pistachio shell, but it almost is similar in that these two pieces that are really rather tough need to be removed for the green coffee bean to be ready for shipment. So there's often a mill required to do that. Some people do it by hand. It's just so slow and difficult and painful that it just doesn't, serve them well to do that by hand. But a milling machine is expensive, and one of the steps that farmers often take is to, sell it to a broker who can take it and have it milled. But again, if a farmer releases their coffee before it's green, before it's processed, then they get like a very minimal payment for the work that they've done. And if they hold on to it until it's completely processed, it's the flesh is removed, the cherry residue is taken off, and the parchment is milled off, and the green coffee is ready, it takes a tremendous amount of time and energy for them to do that. Then typically, if a farmer has the capacity to sell their coffee into overseas market, if a broker, say from the United States, were to come and buy their coffee based on the quality of the bean and the flavor, they'll put those coffee beans into 150-pound bags roughly, and put them on a container ship and float them to the United States, where they're distributed to coffee roasters who buy them. It's a long, arduous, complex process, and there's so much money involved in this. But I think the injustice that I feel is present is that the farmers who really do the majority of the work are really paid the least of anyone in the entire pipeline. So that is one of the reasons why we are seeking to find ways to be just in how we purchase coffee from farmers. And there are brokers that are really good, and we've worked with them, and we do. But we also would like to try to find ways to be more direct so that the farmer's coffee can come directly to us where we roast it, or even roasted coffee directly from that farmer who roasts it and packages it and ships it to individuals who buy it. We're trying to find ways to get out of the middle so that the bulk and majority of the dollars that are spent on coffee can go to the actual individual who raises it. So that's our endeavor. And I just wanted to tell you today what I've seen in at least several of the farmers that I've met. The incredible amount of toil, the sincerity and integrity with which they do their job, and their ability to, find other ways and other streams of income to kind of support their family, because coffee, unfortunately right now, just really for a lot of farmers just is not making it. So that's a story I wanted to get out to you today. And I just wanted to also remind you, if you've seen our offer on Facebook, if you order a bag of coffee, even a single bag of coffee, we will donate a meal through a restaurant in the town of San Juan La Laguna. That restaurant works with people who have been trained in a place that works with vocational training for people with disabilities. And that restaurant is a wonderful restaurant, giving hope to people that before had no hope. They'll cook the meal and donate it to a person in need. So you get 20% off a bag of coffee, you get $5 shipping, no matter how many bags you purchase. And every bag will provide a meal for someone who's in need right now. So that's just a way we're trying to engage in the community and give back to the people that work so hard to give us our daily cup of coffee. Here at Top of the Lake, we want coffee to be personal for you. We'd love for you to see a face of someone, the farmer that raised it, or someone that we've talked with in the community along the way that benefits from your purchase. So that's our goal, and I'll continue to provide stories and updates about what we're doing and how the farmers are coming along as we're able to reconnect through travel to Guatemala. So thank you for joining me today. I hope you have a great day. I hope you're enjoying a great cup of coffee, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for joining me.